shifting attention to the west of the continent right now, specifically honing in on news in Nigeria. We've seen First Bank of Nigeria saying it's prepared to buy lenders bailed out by the nation's central bank. In an interview with Lagos-based Punch newspaper, Chief Executive Officer Stephen Olabisi Onesanya says the bank will only buy banks that fit its strategy, but he's declined to name any specific targets. In the meantime, Nigeria's third largest lender by market cap, United Bank for Africa, has opened its first Southern African business unit in Zambia. The group said in an email statement over the weekend that UBA Zambia started operating last week following approval by Bank of Zambia. The move is part of the group's rapid expansion plans. It already has a presence in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. So that's just some of the news over in the region. Of course, amidst the entire banking industry furor that we saw at the end of last year, we saw the aviation industry in Nigeria also coming under the spotlight, with some talk about a possible bailout of that industry as well. To run us through the status of the industry and how dire the situation is right now, that a step like this is being anticipated, Bayo Adeiji, who is the MD of ARM Investment Managers, joins us live from our studios over in Lagos, Nigeria right now. Bayo, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Well, what's the overall picture looking like when it comes to the aviation industry in Nigeria at the moment, and where do the current pressure points come from?
You're right to say that the situation as it is does look very difficult, and I think you used the word dire. They operate against in a very difficult environment, and a number of them have a significant debt overhang, which exacerbates the problem. I think that the main problems lie with what I would call their overheads, their costs of operating, which is primarily the license fee environment in which they operate against. So the various landing fees, flight charges, overflight charges, and so on and so forth, parking fees, as well as aviation fuel. There are calls for a bailout of the sector. I think we would rather something that is a bit more measured and reform-minded, as opposed to just basically handing over cash, which we're not sure will be properly managed or properly applied.
So let's take a look at it then as it stands, because you've painted out a bit of a picture and you're saying that a bailout may be not the best option to be exploring right now. What would be some of your recommendations for the industry and how we can see them safely take flight once more?
Thank you. I think I mentioned their high overhead costs. I think the government could do could help significantly if it were to either cut to nothing or cut significantly the array of fees and charges for which they pay, which typically not only do we pay higher fees than many other regions, in fact benchmarked internationally. But unfortunately for the airlines, they don't even get the services, the commensurate level of services for which they pay. That's a significant cost to them, and if the government were to waive or to cut these, I think it would make a big difference. I think if the government, in addition, this isn't something that is direct to the airlines, but if it was also to do something similar towards, say, passenger fees, that would also make a big difference. For instance, I think we pay at something like $31, almost twice what the average passenger fee is in, say, in Heathrow. And you can imagine in such a poor environment, or in a very price-sensitive environment like this, if the government were to direct their things at making it cheaper for the airlines to fly, and also being able to influence the prices that they charge for their tickets, because those sorts of taxes have been reduced. We can increase not only that the airline to have lower operating costs, but also increase passenger traffic.
So that's just some of the recommendation that's out there at the moment. We've got a bailout package being called for on the one hand, policy reforms, reforms as far as charges are concerned, also to consider. But given, bearing in mind that these are all recommendations at this stage of the game, what's the playing field looking like in terms of possible consolidation in the sector while everything gets bandied about?
Well, we could end up with something that looks like a consolidated position, but I suspect it would be more consolidation by attrition or some of the existing players falling out rather than purposeful consolidation, if you like. Traditionally, this time last year, for instance, I would have spoke of three reasonably strong players. At the moment, of all those three, only one of them appears to be that strong, and possibly because it's just got a somewhat different financing model or ownership model. So we don't have a lot of, it's not as if the top end of the market is quite strong and that they're able to absorb the smaller airlines that are struggling even more than they are. So if there is consolidation, I suspect it will be, as I said, because a number of the marginal players, and albeit this is a relatively marginal industry, by the way, just really fall to the wayside if those sorts of reforms that I was advocating are not adopted fairly quickly.